We're live.
We are live. Well, welcome to my channel, Peter.
I am really happy to be here, Carla.
I really appreciate you being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I just had to spend some time outside as much before the broadcast and get some fresh air and look around with my binoculars and see what's going on back there. And um, been
Nice.
going through the book a little bit and worked on some more of my oracle.
That's wonderful. We have some guests already in the chat. Oh,
Yay!
look, Peter's here. We have Twisted Sushi.
Twisted sushi. That's
I know, awesome name, right?
it.
We have Lady Knight of Avalon, Maria.
Hi, Maria.
And then we also have Julie.
She's right down there. She's working on her stuff. She's working on this great oracle.
Oh man, I'm telling you, you guys got some great stuff coming up. So, chatting with you, I would think is not really a chat; it's a conversation. Nothing light about it. So we have Carol and Jonathan. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for being
Hello,
here
Jonathan.
today. And hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
So I want to get to know a little bit about you, Peter. Like, your career, because you're retired now, right?
2019, I got out of teaching.
So that's was that the majority? You were a teacher?
Yeah, I started off. When I went to school, I started off as a botany major, the art minor, um, and then I ended up taking off for like 3.5 years. And people said, "Don't quit school because you'll never go back." I'm like, "Well, that's just what it is." I mean, you start making money, and just trying to feed yourself, and then pretty soon you get caught up in the wheel, right? Um, but eventually, I went back to UW Milwaukee, and then I switched my major to geology, and then I started to work with the Milwaukee Public Museum. Actually, I did that after I started working with the DNR first. I was a naturalist with them for a couple, I think three seasons, and then I started working at the Milwaukee Public Museum in the geology department there, mostly in paleontology. So digging dinosaurs was what we were doing. Yeah, that was a blast. That was a good time. Hard, but it was really good. Did that for a few years, and then finally, I started taking more classes. It's like, oh, I could have stayed in college like till now. But I started taking some anthropology classes, and I said, oh man, physical anthropology is so cool. I want to do this now. And the summer of, I think, 84, I went on my vision quest, and I was told in no uncertain terms, you will be a teacher. I literally laughed out loud. I literally laughed out loud. But that next, when I got back, I went into the university, changed my major to education, and then I've been doing that pretty much ever since. So, taught for 31 years, and then with the naturalist and paleontology stuff a little bit longer than that. But yeah, taught science was pretty much everything I taught. 7th and 8th grade, most of my career, 27 years of it.
Yeah, and a wise person told me that when you teach, you also learn. So, I mean, that material is probably like the back of your hand, isn't it?
It is. And once I stopped using, I hated textbooks. And of course, every board of education requires you to have a textbook. But an opportunity came up where I could give my textbooks away, so I started writing my own curriculum. And if I read something that morning on the topic that I was teaching that day, I taught it. And I couldn't get any more up to date than that, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
which is the bad problem with textbooks. Not only are most of them written in Texas, but they're way behind the times, and they're handpicked. They're cherry picked for whatever they want you to know. And so my kids got a lot of good education. I was outside the box for sure.
That's absolutely amazing. I wish I would have had you as my teacher, because I feel like there is a curriculum that we have to adhere to, and it's not exactly accurate?
Well, the thing is, what we want to do is look at skills. What skills do you want to have when you get out of this class? And once I know that, the way I teach it shouldn't matter. As long as you are, if I can test you before I start the unit and then test you on whatever the outgoing skills you're supposed to have, as long as you have them, what difference does it make if I teach it the way the textbook has in hands out? I was never a worksheet guy. I hated it. So there wasn't a lot of worksheet stuff. It was all hands on, a lot of
So
work.
when they gave you the curriculum, or they said, so this is, I mean, because like, so was it school, elementary, high school, college? What were the students age group?
But
Oh, you said 7th and 8th grade.
yeah, most of my career was between 12 and 14.
Okay. So did you, like, were you told this is what you need to teach? And, so the books are like, this is what you're going to teach. When you got that, you were like, how can I put this in my way without getting in trouble? Or,
Well, when you first start teaching, though, it's like probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I was hired like 2 weeks before school started. Yeah, whenever I see past students of mine, I ask them if they're still in counseling after having.
that's
But
awesome.
I was hired 2 weeks before the school year started because they lost a teacher. It was an inner city school in Milwaukee. It was on the border between two gangs, the 2-4s and the 2-7s. It was a tough school, and I really didn't have any time to really prep. So I followed the book. Here's your worksheets. Here's the book.
Okay.
And I was like having the kids reading out of it one time because they won't do homework. I mean, kids just, even here in Watertown, they don't do homework. And I was having them read out of the book, and the brand new superintendent who had just started walks into my classroom with like this entourage of people, and I'm like having kids read out of a book. And that changed me. That changed me right there. And so with that one, I mean, kids hated taking tests. So I said, okay, I'm going to give you guys a written test. But the second half of the test is that if we're studying weather, I want you to, here's your group of four kids together, come up with a rap about weather. And you've got to include, here's 25 terms. You got to include at least 10 of those terms, and it's got to make sense. And I'd give them, half of a class period to work on it, and then they would present it at the end, and I would grade them based on that, because that, and sometimes I would literally stand on the tables to get them to pay attention to me. But I had 42 kids in a class. You can't teach 42 kids in a classroom. You just can't. And so, I mean, that first year was interesting. But I mean, using the book, I get it. But it's once you get comfortable, there's so many other ways you can teach that same material.
Well, I think that like getting into like how the U.S. is with their whole curriculum on education would be a different whole other show.
We're going woke. Careful.
Yeah. So I am very interested in your book and the evolution of the book.
Say that again.
The evolution of your book, because you have a book previous, correct? That was kind of like where this came from.
Well, it was kind of the backstory on that was, I'd been drawing for a long time, and I don't really consider myself a poet, but I wrote poetry, and I had done a lot of shadow work. We were talking about that earlier, and I had. I think I had just got done with a ritual that's called the Sacred Hunt. And there was a really, how you hear those voices just keep niggling at you. And they said, you got to get this stuff out. And I'm going, I'm not doing that, And, Julie is, a wonderful artist, and she was very successful with all kinds of stuff. I didn't feel the need to have to produce something for people to see. But finally I made the deal, said, okay, fine. I will publish a book, self-publish a book in a year. And so I worked quite hard, compiling a bunch of dreams and poetry and some rough drawings. And I finished it in a year, and it was called World Tree: The Metaphysical Journey of a Closet Shaman.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I did look. It's still on Lulu. I cannot get back. I'm not sure what account I started that one on. I cannot get it. I'm gonna probably. I don't want anybody to buy that book. It's it's a total embarrassment to me. But it was a beginning. And as I evolved as a person, I felt like I wanted more stuff in that book, and that's basically how this one, Anima Mundi, has kind of grew and evolved from that. Um, and that center section we were talking about, living lightly, that was an addition for me. I was doing some of my pictures, or most of them pen and ink, or just black and white, but some of them are colorized, and I wanted to include the color. And
Mhm.
of course, that pushes the price of a book way up. But if I'm going, if I had one color picture in there, it still would be considered a color book. So I said, you know what, I'm going to throw the rest of those in there. But in that middle section, I had nothing, and I thought I'm going to include photographs. So, and all those other pictures that I had taken, and so I included full color photographs in the middle, and that came to me when I was sitting out in the woods in the dark. What I was going to do with that middle section, it was just something I felt like I needed to get out into the open.
So, like Jonathan said, when he first got his book, he seen a dragon. And it's like, your drawings are amazing because there's more than just a dragon. There's so much more in it.
Right.
And
If you turn them upside down, you're going to see there's a cloaked priest in his head.
oh my goodness, absolutely. So I mean, it's there's a message within it. And so I'm curious, when you're drawing, are you like in a state, um, like a vision of some sort, or meditation?
um, I've been drawing and keeping a journal since I was, in middle school, and for me, it was a way of kind of settling my brain. When I was taking notes, I take lots of notes. A stroll through Peter's mind, an entanglement of something. So crazy forest back there, all entangled. But I appreciate that, Jonathan. Yeah. So when I would take notes, sometimes I would get off into doodling, and nobody bothered me about it. But those doodles helped settle my mind. And
Okay.
so when I would get home, to kind of relieve the stress, and usually that was me on the bed before I went to sleep, elbow up with my journal in front of me
Okay.
and writing. And then sometimes I didn't feel like writing, or sometimes I did both. Sometimes I just start with a doodle. And then pretty soon that doodle would just turn into something. Sometimes I'd finish it before I fell asleep, and sometimes I'd come back to it, 3, 4, 5 nights in a row. And so the symbols in there are, I think one of the terms I know that Amber had used is like channeling. I don't know if I would
Yes.
use that. I mean, that is kind of what it is. It's kind of automatic because I'm not really,
Right.
all of a sudden I go, hey, wait, that looks like a bat, like, oh, wait, that looks like a dragon. And most of my stuff, and I mean, I can almost always tell you like where I started. There's going to be some sort of tiny little thing, and then that's what has expanded to the rest of the drawing. So there's and to make the oracle out of that was interesting, because I didn't have like a certain concept. I wasn't drawing fertility, because there's so many symbols in each one of those. Or there might be 10, 15 different animals in one picture. How do you how do you separate that? But that was a good process for me to go through that and really pull out the pieces. And then I start seeing like, wow, I draw those things a lot. You're going to find oak leaves and acorns a lot in my drawings. A lot of birds, and I'm sure there's some sort of psychological thing with that. But the
Right.
symbology behind there was really fun to kind of pick through for the oracle.
So
But
it's not intentional until after it's done. Then you're like, oh, so it's kind of like maybe like a message from your higher self, and then you look at it and you go, okay, All right.
And the way I describe it is I just draw till I'm empty. Where pretty soon just get to the point where there's nothing. I thought maybe necromancy, but bibliomancy works. Um, I would like to see somebody do it. I mean, to use it that way. But I am not a reader. That's not my forte. It's not. Um, it's nothing I'm trained in. I mean, I've heard enough of it, like from Julie, that I've picked up on a couple of things. But I'm more like look at the card and I get my own interpretation from it, and that's kind of where I push people, even with the oracle, is like, look at the picture. What I say really doesn't matter that much. What are you getting out of it? And I think
Mm-hmm.
those messages then are also your own subconscious or unconscious or superconscious, coming in and interpreting those images too. So yeah, I don't, I can't just like draw a face. I can't like look at you and draw you.
Right.
But sometimes my stuff comes out fairly realistic, and I don't really know where that comes from.
I thought that as I was going through your book, that it looks like something, but it looks more than just one thing. And so the whole thing is like, I'm interested to know, like your oracle, um, you'll be using like your artwork. I'm assuming that you've already put in here.
Yeah, that one didn't make it. The one next to it, the goddess one, that one is actually one of the cards. Um, and I don't remember which one that one is, but I chose 8 sections. So the book also has 8 sections. So I chose 8 for the quarter and cross quarter days, essentially, and divided them up to directions. Oh, man, I think Julie will also attest that music is so important to me.
Mm,
And I don't necessarily draw while the music is on, but music is a day doesn't go by without me listening to it for sure, and so that, yeah, it's like I said, can't think of a time where I actually was like listening to music and drawing, but I'm sure it happened. Um, but yeah, music so important. One of the chapters is sacred songs. It's certainly one of those things.
So I went through your book, and like I agree with what Amber had said when she was talking to you. I don't want to give it all away because, like, when I first started getting into the book, it was like I wanted to take it slowly and take it in, and then I realized that this isn't the kind of book that you pick up and you read from one point to the other. It's something that, oh, you know what? There's something in this book that I can reference, and it's also about your shamanic, if I'm even saying that right, journey. So what does being a shaman mean to you? What is that? For say I don't know nothing about shamanism.
I
What
don't
is
either. Who does? Um, excuse me. Well, I mean, first of all, I know that can be a trigger word for some people to use somebody else's term for magical work, or a person who does the magical work through trance or whatever. Shaman is actually kind of a Siberian, Manchurian word, and it originally was those people. I mean, that person doing that work in that area is a shaman.
Mhm.
That person in indigenous Americas does the same kind of stuff, but we don't call them shaman. And I think over time, I think we've all finally, hopefully, we've settled in. I'm not trying to take over anybody's culture. I'm not trying to make myself into something I'm not.
Right.
But it's a great term, and I think for a lot of us, it puts us into a place where we kind of understand what shaman is.
Yes.
Um, so for like, shamanism, I mean, for me, it's kind of going into a different place. It's traveling to the other worlds. It's getting there in a lot of ways. So drumming is a really good way to do it. Rattling is a great way to do it. And I think even people who do something like sweat lodges or Sundance and here in the indigenous Americas are doing shamanic work. Would they call themselves a shaman? Probably not. But they're doing that deep work on a spiritual level and getting information from the other worlds. And and they come in all different kinds of ways. And for me, and when we talk about like an initiation, for some people, it's something that they're going to study and pursue, which is probably the way it should be done. For me, it was more of a involuntary initiation that happened when I was just a kid, and then it's just kind of grown from there. And then it hit really heavy in my early 20s, and then I learned a lot. So
Yes.
yeah, and as long as I think as long as we have that baseline, I'm
Hmm.
more comfortable talking about shaman or shamanism.
Hmm.
I don't call myself a shaman necessarily. I mean, in the first book, I was a closet shaman, and that's because I had to keep kind of my pagan roots relatively subtle. I mean, the community I live in is small. It's very conservative. I've been on the blunt end of a lot of the you know Christo fascists in the area coming after me, and they didn't even know the stuff. I mean, my kids, I don't think have ever actually seen me work. So I mean, they didn't have a clue, but for whatever reason, I think it's probably my long hair. I don't know.
It's very personal.
It is. It is. And there's some things I'll talk about and some things I won't.
Mhm.
The stuff that's in the book, of course, I mean, I was willing to talk about. And I think that one section under dreams and visions, it's section on the fire circle. I was doing a lot of deep shadow work with that, and a lot of it was shamanic. So, uh, so yeah, there it is. I mean, and I've done healing work for people, and uh, uh, haven't really done too much soul retrieval stuff. To some extent, I have, but there's a lot of aspects to shamanism that we all probably do. I mean, using our own sacred tools, you know.
Yes. After like reading most of your book, like I got to the middle part that you're talking about, the visions and the dreams and stuff like that that you have in your book, and that's something I would like to really take my time and get through. So that I have not done, but the most of it I have questions about that. Not really. That's just something I want to read.
Okay.
So like what I'm getting at is what you describe is like your journey with your higher self or your like past life stuff. It's like to me that is, I think, um, a personal. You're describing a personal journey that I think we all would like. We have, it's like I'm having a hard time saying what I mean, but you are somebody that I look at and I see a very educated, um, intelligent man. And myself, like I graduated from high school. Yay. But I'm thinking, okay, so the conversation that I'm having with this man, we're not so different. And you're on that same spiritual journey. And it's inspirational to, you wrote a book, you know?
Yeah, I'm just also I want anybody to think that it was done out of any kind of sense of ego either. Sometimes those voices just keep pushing you, and you've got to either do something with it or I guess continue on with your mundane self. And like I said, the book really changed over time because I knew I wanted to redo it. Um, I mean, even I don't even know what to call it, and I do kind of explain some of that in the introduction to the book.
Mhm.
Um, like, what am I doing? And one of the parts I think is actually I had a lot of fun with was the whole thing of Julie calling me like a paradox, and it's like I'm not a paradox, and then by the end it's like, yeah, I'm pretty much a paradox, um, an enigma of sorts. And you're right. I think spirituality, our journeys, is the great equalizer. It does not matter where you're at in academia. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really wonderfully evolved people who graduated from high school. You don't have to have any kind of a degree. It's all life experience.
And that's where we are. Yeah, we're all on that same journey. And I mean, I would like to think that most of the people I surround myself with are, it's hard to communicate with somebody that's not.
Well, right. And I don't know if that comes with age. As I get older, as you said, this isn't going to be a chat as much because I'm not much into. I mean, I can do some of the small talk, but I would rather like talk about cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
you
Cool
know,
stuff.
and
This is cool.
sometimes that's science. And for me, the whole spirituality and science are not mutually exclusive. They're
No,
integrally
alchemy.
entwined. If we don't have science without real true spirituality. And
Right.
unfortunately, I think the dogma of science is also kind of causing us to have some issues too. And I think that's more of a masculine approach to it. I
I think
think
you're
getting in touch with the divine feminine is super important for any
right.
scientist.
Hmm.
And so, and I get like compartmentalizing. If I want to do a good experiment, I'm changing one variable at a time. Well, that's such a guy thing to do, but it does make for good science because I don't know what cause and outcome if I did not, if I don't just change one variable and see what happens, and I change a different variable and see what happens. So there has to be this blend. It can't be. Even like in my oracle, I don't have reversals because I think you need to look at the whole picture, everything, and I think science needs to do that same thing.
So let's get into the book.
Okay,
Like, the first word that stuck out is heareth. So
Hiraeth,
heareth, okay.
Hiraeth, yeah, with a little
Heareth.
r in there. It's a Welsh word. Yep.
And that is uh, a Welsh word that means longing for home. And it's like you start the book on that, talking about that, like the whole word, the word and what it means to you.
Yeah, it's one. I mean that's why languages are so cool, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, if you look at like Inuit language, there are like over 50 words for snow. We just say snow, right? There's like 50 words for snow. There's all different kinds of snow. And hiraeth is a word that we do not have a direct translation for in English. And so it's a whole. It's an emotion. Um, as much as it is as a noun, I guess, as an adjective. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It translates really to long field, and the idea is that so you're standing on the edge of this field and you're looking across it and you really don't know what's over there, but you're just longing to go see it, right? You just have this intense emotional response to wanting to know what's on the other side of that field. And for me, it was a great word. And the way I explained it in the book is, as crazy as social media is, um, that was a meme or something that had come up. It's like, well, that's a cool word. And so I really started looking at it. And then I read a book called The Long Field by Pamela Pero. Um, and it was great. And she was studying in Wales and she started learning the Welsh language. But it's a kind of an emotional response to something. And
Yeah.
I had these deep emotional things that would just, cause me to tear up. And it's like, what is that about? And that's kind of like the embodiment for me of understanding Hiraeth. It's a great word, and I
It
know
is
we've
a
all
great
I
word.
know we've all felt it, right? I know we all
Yeah.
have it.
Well, after I read that, I thought it's kind of like it's searching for your purpose. It's like exactly what you had said. The longing for home is like it's what makes us want to, search for the meaning of life. Almost. That was a very good word.
Yeah, it's a great term.
And you started your book with it, and I
I
thought,
pretty much did. I guess I did. Yeah.
that's amazing. It's kind of set the tone. Um, so the book is invaluable. Like if something was to happen and tell, I mean, I don't know how much you've watched on my channel or about me, but I'm one of those people that I am a conspiracy theorist. Okay. It's like it gets me, and then I want to, look into it. But I think if anything happened, I'm good to go because I have this book now. And
Oh,
I recommend it because, I mean, for you and Julie, I think they're good to go.
Yeah, if
They've
you're looking for
already.
survivalist stuff, I would go with the Firefox series myself. But there's like 25 books of that one. Everything from how to skin a hog to growing vegetables. Yeah. But afternoon. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think certainly some anyway.
No problem, April. So, um, so yeah, again, you start your book out with that, and then
I
you
agree,
talk
Carol. I
about.
think that's exactly right. I mean, it's all about, and there's a section in my book called the healing too.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
so
it's excellent.
it's yeah, and that's like the first word I would come up with as far as the book. Any kind of way for me to describe it. It's healing, and most of it for me. Again, I hope it's not doesn't seem egotistical, but I'm hoping somebody. Hi, Amber. Um, so, but
I don't think it's egotistical at all. I found you very humble in the way that you come across in your book. And that's why I said I think it's very easy to relate to. I think there's some sections where um, you might be a little bit intimidating with, um, like for somebody who is all stuck in technology, you know, because it's hard to like we lost power the other day and it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? But no, you ease it's very you're easing people into it's really simple to do certain things. I know you had mentioned yeah, there's a lot of hard work involved, but once you get to that point, the rewards are much greater and when you think about what you're not taking away from the earth and you've got this relationship going, it's a give and take. It's very respectful of Mother Gaia. And um, one of the things we had talked about before we came on here is when we keep treating Mother Earth like um, putting a band-aid on it, or like if you've got something that's broken and you put some gray tape on it, eventually what's going to happen is it's going to break down and you're going to have to start over or rebuild it the right way.
do it right. Yeah.
And the things that you put in your book are a good way to um, just try it out. For one, you're definitely not hurting anything and you're going to benefit yourself. And the beautiful thing is there's pictures, there's recipes, and I love all the recipes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, all fermentation recipes.
Yes. In fact, my daughter has talked about wanting to try the
Kombucha. Yeah,
kombucha. Yeah.
kombucha. Yeah.
And I mean, we even see the lovely Julie.
Collecting cabbages.
Yep. And by the way, I love cabbage. But I mean, so there's that. Um, let's see. As I was going through it, there was a couple questions like Earth Overshoot Day, July 29th, 2021.
Yeah. So every year, a group comes up with a date they call Earth Overshoot Day. And it wasn't that long ago. It was just a few years ago that it was in September. And essentially, the equation aside, what they look at is the human demand for resources. And then you look at what the Earth is. There you go. It's so simple. Julie makes really good kombucha, by the way.
Mm,
And so, humans use resources,
mm-hmm.
and the Earth can only produce so much. I mean, it's a finite planet. Back in the 70s, we called it Spaceship Earth, right? So it's a finite place. And because of human activity, we've diminished systems. We have taken away land to do other things with. And we have slowly been reducing the amount of resources that Earth can produce. Meanwhile, the human population, which I have in the book as well, we're getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so that point at which we're using more resources than the Earth can produce in that year. And that's essentially what Earth Overshoot Day is. And
Yeah.
now it's in July, whereas, I mean, it was less than 10 years ago. It was probably 5 years ago. It was like the beginning of September. So it gets less and less and less every single year. We get closer. We've already worked at a deficit. I mean, you wouldn't be able to run your household if you were, if you had a month and within the first 2 days you spent your entire budget. I mean, where are you going to go from there?
Yeah.
And the planet itself has a lot of resilience, but we can't keep consuming conspicuously without without making some sort of changes. And again, that's certainly one of the reasons why the book was created for me personally. I'm very careful with what I use as much as I possibly can, and I'm not perfect. All of us are
Right.
imperfect, and I'm certainly not as good as some people, and I'm better than others. But there's always room for improvement for all of us.
And if we just picked one thing out of your book, to do that is different than what we're doing now, that is in respect. Imagine if everybody that, you know, did that. Imagine what it'd make Earth overshoot day maybe back farther into the year, instead of July.
Yeah,
Just
that's
even one
such a
thing.
scary thing. Yeah.
So, and then because there's consequences to every action.
Right. We
Um,
don't always know those consequences. That's the problem. I mean, think about climate change. I mean, we back in
exactly.
the 1800s, they were writing about climate change from burning coal. They knew about it back in like 1894. But here, have we done anything? Nope, because we can't see it. We don't. Something happens. Oh well, it sucks being you, and then it happens to me. Then all hell breaks loose. All bets are
Right.
off. And unfortunately, I wish humans would be better at that empathy part of it. It doesn't have to happen to me for me to want to make some changes, and that goes with social justice as well as environment. It shouldn't have to affect me for me to understand that it's something that we should probably be looking at. Right?
So you used your voice, Peter, to like maybe wake somebody up to make a better choice. Just something that helps because, you know, um, I know we were talking about it earlier. You had made reference, you seen somebody with a big diesel truck and they had a bumper sticker or a little sign or a little sticker in their window that said the earth. And it's like, oh my goodness, why?
my
Why?
brain's still exploding from that. I just couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. F the earth is what it said. Meanwhile, he's spewing out his black diesel smoke.
Yeah. And I'm thinking,
You
okay,
realize
just wait. Mother Gaia is going to have her day. And you're
let's
going to be like, oh, okay, maybe I should have taken better care of you.
let's put you in an
But it's
airtight
too
room and
late.
suck all the air out and see what happens.
Yeah.
Screw the air because we don't need that either, right?
Yeah. No.
Oh,
So,
humans. I mean, and those kinds of things are really deflating, but you can't let that kind of stuff get you down. I mean, you may not do it perfectly the first time. You may not ever try something again, but at least you've tried. And we spent years doing living history, doing reenacting. And for my kids, they were with us the whole time. I think the first one we did was in 1989, and we stopped a while ago. But they had to put away. They were I don't think they even had phones, but they had to put away all the technology. It was us around the fire, and that we cooked all of our meals on the fire, and
mm,
it slows you down, and you work with the day. It starts getting dark, and everybody starts slowing down, and that getting into that rhythm, I think, was also something that taught my kids something. And my daughter always says how happy she is for us giving her that experience. And so I think that also helped, to bring us down to this is it. I'm hauling my own water. I'm hauling my wood. I'm chopping my wood. I'm getting the fire started. Got to clean up when you're done. Not using, it's all stuff that, was time period correct. We did like 1770s was our main time period. So everything we had was based on that technology of 1770.
right. So, okay. So my question is, I mean, like, uh, can we coexist with the earth and still have technology. What is your opinion on that? Is like, because technology is constantly, we're new things. But what would be like, because I guess it would just demand like, what is technology taking from the earth? Is there technology that's not taking from the earth that you can see that is evolving, that is benefiting us?
Well, even Carl, even the word technology is an interesting thing. I mean, picking up a rock and driving a stake into the ground that is technology, right? A pencil is technology. Um, it's and these are all really tough, hard questions, right? We have to start. If I want to drive an electric vehicle, I'm not putting pollution into the air in the form of burning fossil fuels, but to get all the materials to make that vehicle, whether it's
Right.
the battery to the steering wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all came from Earth. So there literally is nothing that we can do that doesn't take something from Earth. It's just like, I think one of the things we can certainly do is like, do we really need it? Do I really need that extra thing? Or fixing something that when it starts to break down, as you were referring to earlier, right? I maintain a lot of my stuff. Yeah, Jonathan, I really wish I would have known you back then, because I was always intrigued by SCA.
So
Minus
what
the plague. Come on, we
so
got to
your
have a good plague.
message,
It adds to the drama.
what's the message, or what so you're, I mean, the overall message is like you had said, maintain, take care of. Um what would you like to see? You know what I mean? Like, what would you like to see? What would make you happy if your whole community was participating in like the living in the 1770s, or
No, I think we can balance it. I mean, that's a really great question. I mean, one of the things that we were really kind of working toward, not strenuously, but one of the things we were really looking at was something called an agrohood. Have you ever heard that term?
no, I have not.
So it's an agricultural neighborhood. And so what you have are houses that are built to be energy efficient, as much off the grid as possible. They don't have to be gigantic. I mean, the house that we live in is 173 years old. It's a worker's cottage. It's small. My kids didn't really like growing up in here when their friends were all living in big old houses, right? But it was what we could afford at the time, and I'm really glad that we bought it. And it's a lot less to maintain. So I don't need to have a McMansion. I can have a smaller house. I don't need something that big. And then the idea is that there's a lot of green space within the community itself. So people are growing food. A lot of it is shared. I mean, why do I need a lawnmower and have my neighbor also have a lawnmower?
Right,
Why
right.
can't we just share that kind of stuff?
Absolutely,
If
yeah.
I need a chainsaw, and I don't use them very often, but as I get older, it's definitely makes things easier. It was always me sawing or chopping away. Why do I need to have 25 chainsaws on a block? Why can't we have one and share? And the idea that we would share all of our resources and our skill sets. So if I'm really good at growing food and you're really good at fixing stuff, let's work it out. Almost a barter system. And we. I mean, if I were to look at an idyllic place to live, that would be, people of like mind would be good too. I mean, my next door neighbor on the north end is,
Right.
he's a critical racist as far as I'm concerned.
Uh,
And there's no way. I mean, he calls us all kinds of names. And if I can get rid of those kind of people and have like-minded people, that
that
would be
would
great.
make me happy,
You know,
right?
let's have a rapture of some sort just to get rid of that. But there's a lot of fear there, though. I think a lot, they're all coming from
Yes.
fear,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
change is hard for people. I mean,
It
it's not
is.
easy sometimes. It usually
No,
works out for the better, but getting
absolutely.
through the change is hard. I mean, even if I got my mind set on doing something a certain way and something happens, it takes me a bit to get my head around it. I mean, I will get it done, but it's hard for me to make that change. But it's something that I know that's what I'm like. So
It's a good question.
yeah, there's some. I mean, a lot of those geodesic dome homes are really pretty cool. I mean, we have to think about the materials that we're using, right? I mean, so yeah, and that's been such a great evolution of our library system, right? Where you can borrow,
Yeah.
they're even doing like, you can borrow a kayak and seeing our, because we're called Watertown for a reason. There's a Rock River runs through. I can't think of how many bridges. One, two, probably have like at least five bridges in town. And so, but seeing our community from the water changes our perspective of what we're seeing. And unfortunately, a lot of people want to use their motorized boats. Get out there and paddle. It changes everything. It's quiet. You see the world from a different perspective. So let go of the fear, and let's try listening to other people for once.
Mm-hmm.
And trying something different is always a good thing. Stretch those brains of ours a little bit. But the agri-hoods are certainly, that would be way cool. And we have like this great little spot where we have a busy street here, but we're bordered by the river on our west. And I just thought, man, if I ever won like, the $1 billion lottery, I would try to buy every one of these homes and turn this into an agri-hood. That would be bliss.
Awesome.
Bliss. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a man named Michael Tellinger?
Mm.
He's I guess I'm not sure what he would be like, what his career is, but he is promoting a community, I believe it's in Africa, where they are self-sustained like that.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And they have like free energy, but they come in and they set up the community, and but they have the barter and the loaning and all that, and they all work together. They don't have money. So it's very interesting. And also what you're talking about, I'm going to look into that because I think that's very interesting.
Well, even money is a weird concept, isn't it?
Money is the root of all evil, isn't it?
Oh man.
So with your shamanic, I'm using the term loosely, but your spiritual journey, there's a few things that I thought were really interesting. Like, you believe in past lives. And in fact, I think that's kind of maybe what you have going on with Julie.
Yeah. So the first thing is I tend not to use the word believe.
Okay.
Just because, and actually, I mean, it's kind of a weird spot for me. I remember being in a leadership meeting at school. I was one of the team, school leaders, and we were having some big meeting about something. There wasn't that many around the table, maybe about 8 or 9 of us. And, you start writing these mission statements, and, we believe all students can learn. I'm like, can we, wait. Can we just stop right there? Like, what's controversial about that, Watts, right? I'm going, we either know they can learn, or we think they can learn, or we don't know they can learn, but to believe they can learn, I mean, that word just is kind of weird to me. And I always say, like, right in the middle of in that word, the word is lie, L-I-E. It's too easy to lie when you believe in something.
Yeah.
So, but I use the term. I mean, I do,
Yeah.
but I'm really careful about when I use it, because sometimes it is the word that you want. But I know that past lives are a thing, at least on a spiritual level. But again, I'm an interdimensional being, and I recognize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, Julie and I think, have shared quite a few lifetimes before. And one of the sections under the dreams and visions is about when we first
rage or whatever.
What's that?
The rage that you had because she was
the warrior self that had come out, that just got awakened. And it turned out that after doing some work, it was a result of Julie being basically kidnapped, taken away. And I spent the rest of that lifetime killing anyone who was involved with it, right? And I had her paint that. I also mentioned that in the book too. I asked her if she would do a painting of that, and she did. And then I think it was being displayed somewhere, and it got stolen.
Yeah.
And and I thought it kind of ticked me off. But then, in hindsight, I was like, yeah, that's probably something I probably shouldn't be dwelling on too much. But yeah, I mean, past lives, I think, and I think we deal with them all the time, and we may
Mhm.
not be cognizant of it.
Right.
But if there's a certain trigger for something and we don't know, like you're super afraid of heights, like where is that coming from? I mean,
Yes.
there's probably some sort of deep memory in there, and we can find it. And that's part of the shamanic work, is going back and seeing. You probably lost part of your soul. I mean, they call about soul fragmentation. You try to go back and discover when that happened and how we can reintegrate that in a positive way.
Hmm.
Uh, finding that balance, between, I'm still a warrior. I mean, the city doesn't want to screw with me too often, because I will fight them tooth and nail on stuff. Um, but on the other hand, I don't want to spend my life fighting. One of the stories in there is called Yellowknife, and that was a dream vision that I had about, and I was meeting with these elders, and I said, I kind of slammed my fist down. And I said, I died too fast last time, you know, before I could fight. And now this lifetime, I can't stop fighting. And it's like, yeah, that's still there, right? Those are all kind of the self-discovery that we need to go through. And we're all on our own journeys, but I think we're all connected in a lot of ways, and past lives are one of them.
I believe so too. Yeah, I pretty much everything you said about past lives makes 100% sense to me. Um,
And
and
you can
then,
use the word believe, Carla. I don't mean to step on you, but that is a word I definitely watch. Believe.
well, I was just thinking maybe I think, therefore I am. Is probably
Yeah,
better
I,
than to
I,
say
I
I
think I
believe.
think that past lives are a thing. Sure.
Mhm. Yep. Yes. And I know that that's truth. If there's something that you experienced, more than likely it's a trigger in this life, this
Yeah.
timeline.
The now. I call it
Yeah.
the now.
The now. Absolutely. So, I mean, you've actually, some of your visions are amazing. You've had dreams of like you are an animal.
No, all the time.
So, do you think that that's something that is just existing now, or is that something that you were in a past life, or is that a message
Yes.
to all?
Yes. I think sure. And I think, it's all the context, right? Context is
Yeah.
everything. And intent. I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm literally working to shapeshift into bear, that's me making that, somewhat conscious spiritual choice to do that. Does that mean I was bear in a past life? Maybe. But I do a lot of, especially internal healing work in that guise of bear. I run on all fours all the time in my in my
Yeah.
dreams.
See, that's amazing. I don't think I've ever had a dream like that.
And I've asked people, like, and they go, nope, never had that. I'm going, man, yeah, just, and I can
I would
still, I
love
mean, I can
it.
just feel it just running
Yeah.
through the, yeah.
I fly in my dreams.
I used to do more of that. Yeah, right. You gotta, you have to actually.
Oh no! Oh no! I'm losing some altitude here.
Oh, I remember as a kid, I learned how to do that with a blanket. Instead of, I always had to like flap your arms, right? But
Yeah.
again, there's your conscious self saying, well, this can't happen unless you flap your arms. But
Oh yeah.
I tied a towel or something, or a blanket around my neck, and I was flying in the dream. It's like that was something I always remember. It's like, I don't have to do this. And when you start getting into lucid dreaming, you start making those changes, right?
Mm.
But yeah, pedaling your bicycle and like,
Yeah.
going like a half a mile. Come on, I'm going really hard. It's like, what are those about, right? Oh, they're funny.
Yeah. So hunting. Okay. I grew up uh, with a stepdad who was a hunter, and I helped him skin it. Um, I helped my mother cut it up. Um, you also write about that in your book. So, and something amazing is one of them was a gift. It's like you watched a shapeshifter and then it became a deer? What do you think that was? Can you explain that?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that, and we were talking about ways of living more lightly, is like, a lot of us, for choosing to eat meat is it is a choice. You're choosing to eat meat. Um, do we have the ability to live without it? We do. Uh, Humans physiologically are we're we're omnivores. We're meant to eat, animal flesh as well as plant matter. Uh,
Mhm.
we should be eating more plants than we do meat. The other thing is that if you're willing to go to the store and buy some hermetically sealed chicken breast, but you're not willing to go out and take the life yourself, bring it back and do what you did to butcher it and then put it on the table. Um, that to me is a problem. That if you let somebody else do that work, but you're not willing to do it yourself, I
Mhm.
think that's something you better be looking at. But to be a vegan or even a vegetarian in this day and age, living in Wisconsin or Michigan, you're not going to be eating year long unless you have a lot of land to grow a lot of food.
Right.
So you're buying that food at a grocery store, which has traveled. The average meal has traveled about 4 to 6 thousand miles, and all that petroleum and carbon footprint is all part of eating vegan. So we have you have to keep that in mind that um, we all have to kill. And why is killing a plant any less of an ordeal than killing, a deer? I mean, you're still killing some. We have to kill to eat. So once I get my head around that, um, I didn't start hunting until like 1999, and I started hunting using a firearm, and I never picked up a firearm for most of my life because of what happened to me as a kid. We weren't even allowed to have squirt guns in my house. But once I learned about how a firearm worked, I decided to go and then try to hunt. That particular incident that you're talking about, um, it was interesting. I mean, just being out in the woods. Um, you see so many cool, great things. And I watched this animal turn from a bear to a wolf. I can't remember if there was something else in between, but eventually, when it passed the tree, now it was a deer. Um, and I had to think about whether I should take it or not. um, but the way I look at it is that it's all a gift. If an animal
Yes.
presents itself to me in a way that I can harvest it uh, as humanely as possible, it's a violent
Mhm.
act. I mean, we cannot. I'm not
Mhm.
going to disagree with anyone. To kill something is a violent act, um, and it doesn't come without some. I won't say remorse. There is a certain amount of sadness to it, uh,
Mhm.
but but it became that animal and it was right there. And any other, I mean, if this had been any other animal that I didn't watch shapeshift, I would have taken it anyway. Um, but in my brain, I just kind of rationalized it that if it wasn't meant to be taken, if I was just supposed to watch it go by, it probably would have become one of these other animals other than what I was trying to hunt. Um, so and there's a true Thanksgiving every time we partake in eating an animal that I've harvested. I remember the moments, the whole day, the hunt itself. There's so much mental stuff going on in a hunt as much as a physical ordeal. But I remember it, and some people just can't get that. And I understand. I'm not judging anyone, but um, when I eat it, I'm taking that animal who offered itself to me, so I can live. And it's somber, it's humbling, uh, it's a sacred thing, and I think it's as opposed to me going to a grocery store and getting a pack of ground beef that I never saw the process of getting and making a hamburger out of it. That's okay, but to kill something, to literally have to kill it, is a whole other aspect, and it also treats that idea that you know you know I can't take too much, because I know what went into it. I know I'm going to make this last. It's not something I'm just going to consume thoughtlessly. It's something that is a very deep experience for me when I end up partaking in the animal that offered itself as a gift. And I look at it as a gift.
I feel like after I read that, like what went through my mind was is because of who you are and the relationship that you have with Earth, it's like in Carla language, your third eye is like wildly awake. You're um extremely tuned into the universe. You listen. So whether you want to call yourself a shaman or whatever, you're just extremely spiritual and living in other dimensions while you are experiencing the 3D. So after reading that, I was like, so this, you call it wild one, this powerful entity is exactly what you said. He was saying it's okay because I am sacrificing for you. And I understand this give and take. And this is the message that this is the cycle. And I'm telling you that um, this is the perfect. It's like you already know that. So if there's ever any doubt, that was that entity saying there's no more doubt. You know, it was a very powerful exchange, I think. And that's probably why you've seen it, is so that you could understand that it's not anything to be taken for granted. And just you sharing that is validation that, you know, it's not anything to be taken for granted. It is a very powerful exchange and it is a gift. And I thought it was very, there's so much stuff when I hear it, it makes me very emotional. And when I first heard about your book and the whole story, I thought, man, he is what I would think of as a rainbow warrior. Have you ever heard that?
Sure, sure. Um, one of the things also that once I have taken anything, if I pick up a rock off the ground, or I find an antler shed, or if I harvest a deer, I always give tobacco. So I was taught about my tradition was knick, and so to open the mouth of the animal and put the knick mixture right into their mouths, and to offer it to the land around me and to respect the land spirits that are there. Um, and a lot of those traditions came from the indigenous elders that we were learning from, both Julie and I, separately. Hi, Farah. Um, unbeknownst to us, we had a very small circle of people around us that eventually we spiraled in and found each other. And the Rainbow Warriors were a thing. I know that there's other traditions that have come from the Southwest, but it was used by even the Ojibwe and Menominee from the area. And they, at that point in time, I was in with a group that was very welcoming to people outside their culture group. And we were being taught a lot about the planet and from the indigenous point of view. And so it was important to Wallace and Coco and others that we came together and we worked together to try to make the earth, a more balanced place. So the Rainbow Warrior is, all of us, this is not me doing something that's going to make any big change, but all of us doing some sort of change will create a different world. And it's more in the Oracle, but I do talk about the mega shell and the prophecies, the seven fire prophecies of the Anishinaabe coming from the Atlantic here, and how they followed that mega shell as they went. And so a lot of the elders will tell us that we're in that eighth fire, which is the time it's going to make us or break us. This is the time that we really need to work with all due diligence to heal the planet. We don't have to save the earth because she's going to be fine. She'll be different, but she'll be fine. It's we're the ones, and what I hate is we're taking so many things out with us because of our behaviors. But we all need to be working together. And it seems so divisive right now. I just hope that we're getting that it's coming to a head. That a lot of the underbelly has been exposed, and hopefully people will. I mean, if anything, vote. Even if you don't start a compost pile, vote, please. Let's try to make some changes in the system that we have available to us, and then slowly change it if that's what it's going to take. But I don't know how much time we really have.
Well, and I mean, I think it's about love, period. The baseline is about love. And so, in your intention, making one change, just one. And like I said, if everybody just makes one little change, that something different than what they've been doing, and your book is a great guideline for that. Um, it's it's the effort, it's the intention. It's something will come from it. It absolutely will. If anything, it will bring us closer together. So, um, there's a few comments that I do want to address real quick.
Please.
Okay, so Jonathan does past life. Um, Twisted Sushi does say her little town has a sharing shed where they put extras there for everyone, plants, food, and clothes.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Jonathan, his acupuncture is focused on the past life. And I think, isn't that amazing? That's amazing.
It would be fun. Yeah, it'd be fun to do that with you, Jonathan.
I would love it too. Absolutely. There's a thought that we're living all of our lives at the same time, since time is an illusion. I've actually wondered that. So
Yeah, but there's in the Oracle, I do talk about the different realities, right? I mean, mathematically, there's 10 different dimensions. We live in the 3D, but go to that fourth dimension is time. Go to the fifth dimension, it will be superseded it. But
Ooh,
it,
okay.
and time. I mean, it's relative. I can't quite get my head around whether it's an illusion or not, but it's definitely relative, and it's different in different places, right? Do I have a favorite animal energy?
Yeah.
It a lot of it kind of depends. There's certain animals that keep popping up for me. Owl is a very important entity for
Mm,
me. Wolf, I've been kind of devoured by wolves in dreams on several occasions. And when I run on my all fours, most of the time I feel like I'm in wolf form.
mm.
But the deer is great. I mean, the turkeys are amazing. I don't, but my favorite animal energy. Again, it kind of depends on what I'm doing, but I would have to say somewhere between owl and wolf.
I could see owl and wolf in you.
Woo!
Absolutely wild, and then wisdom. You know, Jonathan had a past life memory bubble up once. He was a wolf on his first solo hunt in a snow
Wow,
covered
cool.
forest. Wow, yes. And he loved the shapeshifter story, as I did. Um, she saw a deer emerge from the grass, a magical green glow. They are one.
And the
Yes.
thing is, I don't know what is Twisted Sushi. What you know her name? I mean, that's probably I don't really.
I think she had told us before,
No,
and
I'm
I
sorry,
don't
Twisted
remember.
Sushi. I just love it. Um, I think the wild ones are like the ultimate in being able to merge between dimensions. I mean, I've watched them just like disappear. Like I don't even know where they went. Right. So that is exactly right. They're all one, and they're so connected. Where we have this brain is always working overtime. They're in that instinctual
Oh
connected
yeah.
mode all the time. And they're cognizant. They think they dream, but they're not confused and distracted by all this other stuff that we put
Right.
around us, right?
I like this, and it makes sense. The indigenous peoples of America have stories of spiritual shapeshifters who sacrifice themselves to help keep the other animals safe, and that's a powerful thing too. Yeah. Let's see. April's back. All right. Okay. So, I have a little story to tell you. The other night, I was driving home and talking about the different dimensions and stuff. I actually seen this all happened in one drive home. Okay. I seen something fly above my car, and
Is it nighttime or daytime?
it was 11:30 at night. It was
Okay.
very dark.
All right.
No lights around except for my headlights. But I seen something with the wingspan. The beast was as big as a car, and it flew very low over my car, and it was tan. And I just had a feeling that the it wasn't of our dimension. And then I'm driving home, and I see somebody had hit a possum, and I seen the eyes, the reflection. Their eyes were reflecting back at me. It was still alive, and it was in the road. And I slowed down because I didn't want to hit it again. And it looked up at me. It had been hit. It had blood coming out of its mouth. So I had to pull over, and it was dying. Have you ever heard a possum hiss? It didn't want me to help it, but yet it did. It was looking at me like, oh my gosh. So I was very emotional when I got home, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. But it was like, there was a minute there that I thought, I am not in this 3D realm right now. I mean, what kind of, whatever it was had me aware at that point, so I was driving not fast for one. So, and then to see the possum, and the possum literally was communicating with me, so, I don't know. It's like everything in your book, Peter, is like, it's saying slow down, and pay attention.
It probably sums it up pretty well. So I'm just holding space on your story, Carla. I wonder I keep wondering if the animal was owl, which is one that helps the dead, right? And so that it was there also to help with that, uh, and the possum. I mean, like you said, just hold space for that little guy until
I did.
the spirit leaves, the soul goes, and that's all you can do, right? And you know that it won't be wasted if you can get it out of the street anyway.
Yeah.
To it'll go back to earth to feed something else.
And I thought, at least as long as I sat there, no one else was going to hit it. I just couldn't touch it. And he moved as much as I could, as much as he could. But yeah, so he definitely was trying to get away from me. But
Right.
when I slowed down to drive off the road, he was definitely communicating with me. Like, he was like, what just happened? Why am I here? What's going on? He was like dazed and confused, and it was just so sad. And it's like, I think when I first talked to you about interviewing you, and you were kind enough, like, I want you to have this book before the interview, and you sent it to me, and then just little things, you were like, what were you getting emotional for? I'm emotional because I feel like there's so much that is happening in the world. We just, mundane, we get up, we go do our stuff, and we forget that the earth is alive. Everything is alive. We're alive. We're all connected.
Uh-huh.
It is emotional, and
But
just
I'm glad. I mean, I certainly wasn't.
no, I know,
I wasn't just poo-pooing it.
I know.
I'm just glad that it stirred emotions. I just get surprised. Like we were talking about earlier, it's like, like everybody knows this stuff. What do you mean? It's like,
Right,
not
like
everybody
Julie
knows
says,
this stuff.
no,
Like,
write
okay.
it down.
So yeah, I'm glad. I mean, if it helps change anybody, I guess it did what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I gotta you know what, let's take a little break real quick, and because I do have some more questions. but let's play word association.
All right.
And everyone in chat, please play along. All right. So the first word is father.
Sky.
Okay. Um, flower.
Bloom.
Car.
Evil.
Mm, absolutely. Um, water.
Of life.
And sun.
Warmth.
Mm, absolutely. I actually had done this with a family member, and it was right after a loved one had died. And it's amazing that, you could ask these same five, or, associate these same five words in a week from now, and you'd have a different answer.
Yeah.
So I think it's just interesting. It shows us where we are in
Our
the now.
state of mind or emotion at the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there is a lot of good stuff in your book about um, the clean living, the living lightly, and we were talking about before we come on here about the very strong chemical that is a herbicide, right? The
Glyphosate.
yes, yes, and it's not just like, for me, I associated it with putting it on, you have your industrial farmers and they're using it because it's, takes all that hard work out of weeding, and my association is, oh, it's harmful to even put it on the ground. But that's not where it ends, is it?
No. It's found in virtually every surface body of water on the planet. We can find glyphosate.
So we find it's in the produce.
Yep. And if you think about it, I mean, one of the parts in that same section is about fermentation and how the probiotics, and I, mean, I do throw a little science in there. And by the way, the glossary that was ended at the end, because I had a friend look over one of the sections, I think the wheel of the year, and she goes, have you thought about putting a glossary in here? I'm going, I have.
Yeah.
She goes, you need to have a glossary. So I do. There is a glossary at the end. I just couldn't help, like, my science nerd self was going a little crazy in there. Um, but if we think about it, I mean, our gut biome is so important. I mean, for our moods, our health, physical and emotional health, for our weight loss. I mean, whatever it might be, we never really understood how connected the biome within our intestinal tract and our stomachs is connected to our brain. And that communication is happening, at a thousandth of a second, back and forth constantly. So, if you're craving sugar, you are most likely craving something else. It might be you're craving more protein. Maybe you're not getting enough protein. But it also might be that you've eaten sugar, and so the flora in your gut that like sugar are going to gobble that stuff up.
Right.
And so there's going to be more of those kinds of bacteria and microbes in your gut, which are going to crave more sugar. If we think about glyphosates, it's an herbicide.
Yeah.
It kills living things.
Yeah.
So if we're eating
Right.
food that has Roundup in it, and we're eating enough of it, it's going to start killing off the bacteria and the biome that we have in our gut flora, and that is creating a lot of issues. I think it's an issue. I mean, they're even finding connections with the microbes and autisms. They're finding the connections again with weight loss. And so, if you're struggling with weight loss, it could be. I mean, certainly not one thing. I mean, there's no panacea.
Right.
But you may want to start paying attention to what's in your gut, and that's why things like the kombucha and eating the pickles are so great. I mean, they say crispy, and they're not made with boiling down the vinegar. They create their own fermentation biomes
Mhm.
in that jar, And when I'm eating that, I'm contributing that to us. And I can't remember the exact numbers in the study, but if we look at what our ancestors had in their gut compared to what we have,
Uh-huh.
thousands of these microbes are extinct. We don't even have them in our gut anymore.
Yep.
And another thing too is getting out into the soil. By having to spray this stuff and keeping my distance. It's like pushing a button, killing somebody. Across the ocean, we don't get to see it, right? Or going to the store and buying your hamburger and
Right.
not seeing it. It's a little bit the same. That I'm on my hands and knees and I'm working in my garden. That soil gets into my nails. It gets into my skin. I'm absorbing those things, and it's considered an antidepressant. So even getting a little bit of those microbes from the soil into my system is really, really good. And glyphosates are I hammer it. I hammer it pretty bad in the book. I do. I take no prisoners with that one. Um, and the World Health Organization says it's contributing to cancer, where our own EPA is saying, nah, there's no
Oh,
proof of
right.
that.
Yeah.
And it's I kind of really hit EPA quite a few times in the book as well, right? But but yeah, the chemical existence is something that we really need to start cutting back on. And again, they're getting better with targeting this stuff with the technology. We were talking about that before, right? And
Uh-huh.
they can be far more pinpoint. They're using GPS and using lasers now to apply these chemical fertilizers, which is a step in the right direction. But we can get by without it, But our soils are so depleted that we need to rebuild those microbes back up into the soil too. Funguses and microbes are the basis of life, and we're killing them constantly. And so that's something we need to pay attention to. So by buying organic, it's more expensive. I get it, but there's no reason for somebody to grow organic produce if they don't make money from it, right? So and buying as locally as possible where it hasn't traveled thousands of miles to get to me. Do I
Yes.
buy grapes that are that were grown in Chile? I do. I want those, right? But the farther we can get away from that,
Yeah.
the better it is for everybody. Going
Yeah.
back to those dome houses, we could be growing a lot of that stuff underground under these domes too, right?
Um, oh shoot, I was just thinking about something. Now I lost it. I was looking at Sushi's comment, and we meet at compost again. Absolutely.
Absolutely right.
um, oh, well, let's address Jonathan's question real quick. He says, what do you think about bottled probiotics, Peter? Do you take them, and do you have any that you recommend?
Bottled meaning like in a pill form. I know that Julie takes some. I don't take any like like tablet type forms of probiotics. I get as much of that through my food as I possibly can. But kombucha is a good one. I mean,
Right.
and
I was just
there's
thinking that.
yogurts and all kinds of. I do mention. I kind of get maybe carried away with a few of the different organisms that are growing in foods that are good for us. But if you look at a yogurt container, you're going to see some of those things too. Um, and I think it's important to vary a lot of stuff. We can't keep eating the same thing over and over and
Right.
expect to get a balanced diet. And I think the same thing is true from where we get our sources of the biota that we should be ingesting. But I don't buy them, so I don't really have any recommendations, Jonathan. I would just recommend if you make your own kombucha, you can make sure that you can include the
I'm
scope.
going to try it. I guarantee I'm going to
Yeah,
try
and
it.
scobies are super easy to grow. And if you don't want to make it for a while, you just put it in the jar with some of that sugar or tea, and you put it in the refrigerator, and it'll come back later. And sometimes Julie makes so much of it, we'll get big thick of it, and she doesn't need that much. So we'll cut it apart, kind of peels apart, looks like a chicken breast almost. And you pull it apart, and we'll chop it up and feed it to our hens. So we'll feed it to the chickens.
Oh, okay.
Also, some people are like kind of using it like a tofu, where they're putting it into a stir fry.
Mm,
So there's all kinds of things you can even do with your scobies, get a little bit out of control. But that get your sources from a lot of different places. I guess that's what I would say.
I remembered what it was that I was going to say is Maria, Lady Knight of Avalon, can attest to there are so many things that they sell us in America that are illegal in other countries. If that doesn't say a lot, we're not paying attention.
Well, look at the headlines in news in other places. You know, what
Yeah.
Americans on the same magazine, America's headline is so mundane compared to what you're seeing maybe in the UK. It's the same it's the same publication, but with two different cover stories on it. And we just and that goes back to that whole belief thing, right? So the I believe was the phrase of the Piscean age, and we need to get out of the Piscean age and into the age of Aquarius, and that the Aquarian age is about I know, and the only way you're going to know stuff is by doing your own research. You
Yeah.
know, I read a lot of labels, and I'm going to when I do all the grocery shopping, I read a lot of labels. You know, and I won't buy stuff. It's like, you know, why add dye to things? You know, like cat food. Why does cat food have dye? Do you think they really care what it looks like? That's done for us. Oop, mom's calling. Say hi to mom for me, Jonathan. See ya. We've gone pretty long here, I guess.
Yeah. I could really talk to you about so much stuff. I would suggest definitely getting your book because there, I mean, there's so much stuff in there, even like depending on what community, if you're into like you're pagan, a lot of pagan background, um like you talk about the seasons and like there's rituals that you do for each season.
There is, yeah. Well, especially with the quarter and cross quarter days, and so you know, in my oracle, I start with Samhain, which from that particular pagan tradition for me is the new year, and so that's Halloween. So around Halloween, and it seems like a weird time though. You know, everything's dying back. Why are you starting the year then? But when you look at the mythologies and especially the Celtic mindset, it's a perfect place to start. It's that betwixt and between time. It's when the veil is really thin, and so we celebrate. Samhain's one of my favorite ones. And then we do winter solstice or Yule. We celebrate Beltane on a big
Yeah, that was the other one.
scale as well, which is May Day. Beltane, which is the Scottish Gaelic form of that. But we hit equinox, and those, you know, the equinoxes and the solstices are important, as well as the fire festivals that are in between. And I think that for anybody who might suffer from SAD, for instance, you know, where the depression hits because it's getting darker, if you make a conscious kind of decision and celebrate those.
I agree.
You know, I was trying to figure out is it a Book of Shadows or a grimoire, and I think the grimoire is more like Middle Ages. It sounds like, and more spells. And I do have some ritual stuff in the book under the Wheel of the Year, where especially for Samhain and for the winter solstice. But but if you follow that wheel, it always gives you something to look forward to. You know, the next thing that's going to be happening along that wheel, and it's always turning. And I think that if we recognize those and celebrate those auspicious days, I think it helps us get through the winter and everything else too.
Yeah, you made a whole chart, and it's really not big, but it's simple. And the chart is about the different seasons.
Yep, the quarter and cross quarter days.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing, like if we think about like May Day, we tend to celebrate that on May 1st. But if you look at the exact halfway point between, you know, the two quarter days, it's more like May 6th or 7th. You know, so you know, calendars are just that's a whole nother discussion on how we screw around with time, right? Whether it's daylight savings time, which is coming up tomorrow, or whatever. It's calendars are up there with the same thing. But by the way, that's called that's turkey tail. It's a type of fungus, and that makes it really good for your tea.
Okay.
So, you know, and wildcrafting is another thing too. That's just a blast. I mean, mushrooms are hard for me. I mean, I like them to some extent, but I'm not as good at as identifying them as I should. So I make sure my friend tries it first, and then I'll try it after him.
That's
But yeah,
hilarious.
so that's turkey tail. That's another one. That's good. That's a good one for you. Funguses are super. I mean, start taking some of the mushroom supplements. Those are really tigers or lion's mane is a really good one. So and we grow them a little bit here as well.
So I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned that you, in your book, that you identify with gods and goddesses, but you have one that is particular that you are like you're drawn to, and I believe you named, she's the Celtic goddess, Bridget, or
Breed. Yeah, we usually pronounce it Bridget here, but Breed is
okay,
she's an important deity for me for sure. I would say that I probably, I mean, if you look at my drawings, I probably draw Cernunnos the most, who is the green man and horned god. But Breed is the sacred feminine for me. And she's an important deity for me.
I find that's extremely interesting. So, what are your who are your ancestors?
Like genetically,
Yeah.
um, boy, I'm a white guy when you look. I remember stories my mom telling us that about having Cherokee because she's from the South. She's from Kentucky. She passed in 1986. But if you look at my genetics, I am like English, Scottish, Irish. I have some. They just added that one because I did do the test. I got some German in me, um, and I have Dane, so I'm also Denmark. Uh, so like the Viking stuff is. I mean, I got my Thor's hammer, of course. I
Right
mean,
on.
so it's definitely pan pagan. I mean, I recognize a lot of it, and a lot of my spiritual practices are based in Native American, mostly woodland culture. Uh,
Right. So, I mean, you're biologically, it's not really that you don't think about that.
no, I don't, and I think that's where our past lives also come in, right?
Hmm.
And but I was taught by Anishinaabe elders, and a lot of my practices come from that teaching. So back in the day when Rainbow Warrior was actually okay, and then things kind of switched, and I got out of the Native American culture a bit just because I was I was experiencing some animosity. And I'm not trying to steal anybody's culture, but it was just what I was taught, and it identified very well with it. And since I live in the Americas, it's you know it seems the indigenous ways are what I should be looking at. I remember when I was in Scotland, I spent a month there teaching, and I had gone into the bottom, the belly of one of the manors, and it was scary. I mean, I'm pretty tuned into stuff, and there was shit happening in that in that in that dungeon basement thing that it was intense. And I had gone down later by myself, which was kind of weird. But I put down tobacco, and I was talking with Caitlin Matthews. I don't know if you know Caitlin and John Matthews, but I stayed with them at their place in Oxford, and I was telling her, she goes, you know, you're in Scotland. they're they're not going to recognize what you're doing with tobacco. I said, what should I have done? She goes, well, whiskey
Uh-huh.
or sing them a song, or give them a song. That's what they would recognize here. So that was an eye opener too, right? I mean, depending on where I'm at, and since I
Oh, yeah.
live in North America, those traditions are super comfortable for me. I feel very comfortable with it,
Hmm.
uh, and even though I might celebrate some of the Celtic deities as well, so or the Norse, it all depends. Sometimes you call
So
it different things.
you, you're married to somebody that is very into astrology. Um, and talking about the ages, what is your astrological sign?
My sun sign, for the longest time, I thought I was a Pisces, but actually, if you look at where the sun rises on my birthday, I'm an Aquarius.
Yeah,
So,
I
so,
think
I,
that's
so
awesome.
I'm a real sky Aquarian, and that's
Yeah.
about all. That's all I really know. I don't even know. I can't even remember because it all changed. I can't even remember what my rising sign is or any of that stuff anymore. What my moon is? What's my moon, Julie? What's my moon? I have a Sagittarian moon.
Oh, see, that makes so much sense to me. Aquarius is like so eccentric. And then you have the your moon in Sagittarius, which is like the humanitarian. So it's like you're eccentrically humanitarian that's driven to just being his eccentric self. It's like, oh, okay, that explains it.
Well, that'd be good. I'm an eccentric humanitarian. That might be my
Yeah,
next description.
yeah, I like it. Well,
What,
I really,
Mr. Watch, you're so weird. No, I'm eccentric. That's like,
yeah, no, eccentric. That is a good word. There's so much more that I could talk to you about in this book.
well, I would be glad to come back at some point, Carla. So that's fine.
Why don't we do that? Especially because,
Unless you also have a major drop in your like viewership, they may want to reconsider. I'm just saying, just throwing
well,
it out there.
I have one more question as far as like for this
Okay,
episode,
gotcha.
Peter, and that is, you obviously, you know, care and want other people to know why you care, and you had the help of your wife saying, you really do need to write this down. Um, what How important do you think it is for other people to receive this message? How important is it?
Probably not as important as that person giving their message. you know,
I mean,
that
right.
I would hope that that we all realize that we all have a part to play.
Hmm.
We all have our stories to tell, and there's a sacredness to that that I think is important too. I mean, um, I don't think the book is going to save humanity, but I think the more that we talk about it and sharing your own stories um, is is the right step on the right path to healing. Um, and a lot of people don't say stuff because of fear or whatever, um, and and it's hard. I mean, for me to put my soul on those pages
Yeah,
is not an easy thing. Why would I do that to myself again? Um, but it just seemed like the right time, and I don't know. I think everybody sharing their stories, I think is important, which is why
I,
your channel is great. I mean, because everybody gets to tell their stories, and I think
I appreciate that.
that's what we all need to hear.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
if my neighbor could hear other people's stories, maybe he wouldn't be such a jerk.
Yeah, yeah. See, I think that the question is more, what do you think is going to happen if people just keep going mindlessly, not paying attention to each other and listening to the earth and just, not caring? I think we see more of it today, but what do you think would happen if we just
If we stay the course, we're going to accelerate to oblivion. I mean,
see?
I honestly don't. I don't think. I mean, there's been so many. I mean, I even hit this in my book with geology, but there's been 6 mass extinctions. We're in the midst of another one. The Anthropocene is something I think is real uh, that we have to realize that. Has it been warmer on Earth in the past? It has. The Carboniferous was warmer. However, we never did that in less than 100 years. Like it didn't happen in 100 years. It happened in 100,000 years or longer. So the speed at which it's happening, and I think that we're just going to see an acceleration.
Yep.
But as we were talking about earlier, if we don't make changes based on our empathy for others, we only make changes when it happens to us. And what's
Yes.
going to happen is it's more and more people are going to be affected,
Mhm.
and then there's going to be a scramble trying to fix it. And
Yes.
we could have been fixing it along the way, and the political will isn't there, and we're letting the easy dollar, you know, oil companies know what they're doing. They know that it's been ruining the planet for a long time, but they're not willing to change. And people, since gas prices go up, they're all like, hell with this, I want cheap gas. And it's just like, that's that fear thing. So what they do is gas prices are going up, and if we were paying what we should be paying for gas, we'd probably be paying $15 a gallon, easy. If we were paying, we subsidize the oil companies, and so maybe that needs to happen. Take the oil companies, stop giving them their money. They're making record profits, but meanwhile, taxpayer money is going toward it. So by being aware, do some research. Don't take things at face value, and you have to take responsibility for yourself to know. Stop believing that someone else is going to take care of it.
That's
You
good.
got to know that
That's
there's something you can do about it.
Yes, you have to know. Yeah, I like that very much. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call this one, and we will have another meeting. And there's a lot more in there that is more about the spiritual side of it that we can definitely discuss. And I think that that is the motivation, maybe, to get people to make those changes.
Right. So, I mean, the book is available on Lulu here in the States, but it's also available through like Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I did do a global distribution on it. Um, so if you live other places, you can still get the book. And I just worry about like how shipping, and I charge like the least I could really charge for it. Because they tell you like the minimum price that you can charge for the book. Well, thank you, Twisted.
That's awesome. Yes. Me.
Um, but uh, but I mean, I would love you to get the book, and mostly for yourself. I'm not looking to make money on it. I mean, um, it's nice to have it, but I don't. I just want it out there, so I don't need to make a bunch of money on it.
She says, "Thank you, Peter, for sharing your wisdom and life experiences." Absolutely.
Yeah, and the platform is great. I enjoyed all the questions, Carla.
Well, good. I mean, I get a little bit, I'm just like anybody else, like, but
And it is available in hardcover. I haven't approved it yet for distribution globally, but it is available on Lulu. And I bought the hardcover just because I wanted it, but it's really expensive. Uh, but I'm glad I got the hardcover. The pictures are
well,
much clearer because I mean the ink on that one is like their standard ink, and I wanted to get like the um, the premium ink, and the pictures are just so. I mean, they're definitely better. I mean, it's still fine, but here's my little granddaughter,
I was just gonna say,
and the pictures are really beautiful and clear. Um, yeah, and there's that little rabbit dude. Yeah, we got so many rabbits in this yard. And there's my grandson. So and
oh
like I
yeah,
said, the photographs they're so much nicer than the paperback, but it's twice as much. So
well, I've been carrying this book with me for 2 weeks now, and I will say that having a hard copy will be the end result that I am looking for because it is. I'm telling you, I think it's awesome. Just, I mean, especially the section of living lighter and all the recipes that you have. I will be using the book.
yeah, I'm
So
hoping that's something that people will just keep revisiting. It's not something you're going to read and
exactly.
put it away. I'm hoping that it's something that you'll pick up. And for me, like just paging through and looking at all the pictures was kind of the first step. And that's a whole different facet of the book as the artwork itself. And I don't really consider myself an artist, but I still appreciate seeing them on the pages. And then the reading, the poetry is, like I said, it's not fantastic, but it's from the heart. And there's essays, and I mean, there's just a lot to take in.
And then you have an oracle that you've been working on.
I'm
How
hoping
close is
I'm
that?
hoping to have it done like within the month. I ordered the cards already. I'll see what they turn out to be. The book I'm going through my third edit on it. You know what? I never thought, I thought I just produced the cards and like people like kind of talk me into it. It's like, I don't really need a guidebook, do I? And then people go, yeah, you got to have a guidebook. I don't really need a guidebook. But it forced me to really look at those pictures a lot in a whole different mindset than I was just, you know, digesting as I was looking at them again for the millionth time.
Mhm.
To pick them apart and to see all the different things in there was really a really good thing. And some of the serendipity of where I place them, and if we can talk about the oracle at some point, but like how I came up with the titles of each one of the cards was a process, and then how they fit in, and then doing the research, going, hey, that actually works really well for that card, and that was all kind of by accident and serendipity. So yeah, that would be fun
It
to
was
talk about.
all meant to come about.
Yeah, and again, I can just charge the minimum amount for those, and it still seems expensive. The book shouldn't be that bad, but the cards are expensive.
You're very humble, and I think that the book itself, you come across very humble. So it's like, I mean, you can tell that you're very passionate, but passion is not ego. You need. There's nothing wrong with being rewarded for that hard work, Peter.
Right, I know. I know. I think being an educator for so long too, I don't expect too much back. A pat on the back later on when I see a kid that I had 25 years ago.
Well, I think you're a wonderful human being. I love you and Julie very much. And I appreciate you coming here today and sharing your voice. So I want you to stay, and I will schedule another visit with you.
Okay.
And I appreciate everybody that came here today and anybody that watches the playback. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I will see everybody soon.
Yeah, have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Carla.